Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And a shout out to the Akims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatam. So if you wasted your time watching his stupid fucking speech on Thursday night, you'll find that he didn't speak at all about the war that he's losing, big time. In fact, they won't cover this, but multiple resources, non-mainstream, they already tried a ground invasion just within the last 48 hours, and it failed. Iran already blew up their landing force and everything, totally smashed it. So any troops trying to enter has already been smashed. And all they can do is bomb infrastructure, but they think that they're going to continue the air attacks so that they can launch ground troops in as they weaken them with air attacks, and it ain't working. And nonetheless, though, Trump didn't talk about any of that on Thursday night. It was a joke of a speech. Who gives a shit about elections when you're fucking talking about World War III and this place being obliterated? Who really gives a shit, right? Although most people don't think that way, right? Because they're not in the know. They think this place is going to last on forever. Oh, there's going to be now election territory. Oh, China. China's interfering in elections. But Trump, I guess upon the release of interference in elections, told on himself because I guess Putin helped him, right? You know, because there's the dirt on that Putin helped him to win. You see how there's nothing but corruption everywhere, and you're just trying to dance around the subject that you're losing the war. The war ain't going so good. Everything you're trying is failing. You know, that's why Babylon the Great has fallen. And it's no longer the Lady of Kingdoms. It's no longer the superpower that it once was. That they're saying, have you become as weak as we? You know, is this the man that would not open a house to his prisoners? Is this the man, you know, who once ruled the world? And they're looking at this Donald Trump character, and they're seeing how weak America is. It's now time to move in on the kill. And so, what's that mean? That the Most High has gotten everyone into that valley of Jehoshaphat. And we're watching it in live time.
However, he is talking about Iran, and there's new information just coming out within the past few seconds. Jennifer Griffin putting out that this is a new phase of the escalating military strikes, the sixth night. Based on various reports and well-placed sources, the U.S. has targeted roads and bridges based around Bandar Abbas, and it's significant because it cuts the IRGC off from resupply and isolates them. Bandar Abbas is key to controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Many strikes tonight, again, from our Pentagon and National Security correspondent. So, a lot happening in Iran. Let's bring in our panel. Hugh Hewitt, Fox News contributor, Olivia Beavers of the Wall Street Journal, and Robert Wolf is also a Fox News contributor. Hugh, I want to start with you and the significance of what we're seeing of this escalation on its sixth night and some of that news about the IRGC being cut off.
It's very significant, Brett, and I'm glad the president is going to focus on Iran, at least in part, and I hope mostly the majority of his speech is focused on the fact that we are in a combat situation right now. When he takes to the airwaves in about an hour or so, there will be American pilots on those, certainly in the skies over Iran, over the Strait. There are a score of Navy ships enforcing the blockade. We boarded, as was said earlier in the podcast, a vessel that was trying to run the embargo earlier tonight. I think it's vital that the president keep that in mind, that American servicemen and women are in harm's way when he's on the air. So what
Donald Trump appears to be preparing for a ground invasion of Iran with U.S. Special Forces as he gets more and more desperate. Predictably, Iran is not submitting or surrendering to Donald Trump's airstrikes. Donald Trump is increasing the escalatory measures by the United States. Iran is responding by climbing the escalatory ladder as well. And the Trump regime is now leaking out to places like Axios and the Wall Street Journal and others that one of the options that they are highly considering is a Special Forces ground invasion of Keshem Island or some of the nearby coastal areas. If you look at where the Trump regime is striking in Iran, as they have been consistently escalating day after day with these massive strikes and also these very serious war crimes striking bridges. Most of the bridges are near the Bandar Abbas region, that port city area in Iran, and the Trump regime strikes appear to be an effort to try to separate the Bandar Abbas area from the rest of Iran, and that would allow the special forces, in theory, to take over the Keshem Island, in theory, control the Strait of Hormuz, and I say in theory because it will be a massive failure. It will result in the mass slaughter slaughter, in my opinion, of these special forces, it will then cause a massive escalation, and things are already escalating very, very quickly. Iran has also said that it will then send ground forces to some of the nearby Arab nations where there are U.S. bases, and I think this will be a complete and utter disaster. But I think if you see the strikes that are taking place right now by the United States in certain coastal areas of Iran, it appears to be prepping the terrain for a ground invasion. Now, this comes at a time as well that there are other media outlets confirming U.S. casualties since the U.S. escalated this war in Iran recently. We've been reporting now for several days that we've seen these medevac airplanes in the area. I've been showing you the before and after satellite footage of a base in Jordan where there seemed to be mass destruction at some of the barracks there. And I said, well, that's where the U.S. troops are staying. And I believe the U.S. troops were there when this strike took place. And I said, it seems that those medevac planes likely have to be dealing with this. I mean, take a look right here at the King Faisal Air Base from about 48 hours ago. You'll see the before and after on this satellite footage. I mean, it was hit hard. And now you have CBS and others saying that there were several casualties of U.S. troops. CENTCOM has remained silent. They don't know if these were fatalities or serious injuries. Apparently, sources are saying it's not fatalities, but I think CENTCOM is covering all of this up. It does seem to be serious injuries, although we need to get more data there. But if you take a look at what's just happened in the past 12 hours at a separate air base in Jordan. So what I was just talking about there was the air base, the King Faisal Air Base, and those barracks, which were hit hard by Iran. But take a look in the past 12 to 24 hours, what was going down right here. Take a look at the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan right here. I'm going to play for you some of the B-roll so you can see for yourself what was going on. Now, according to Jordan, they say they intercepted all of the ballistic missiles from Iran. They say there was no damage at all. There was lots of damage. And the Patriot or THAAD interceptors, which were supposed to be supplied by the United States, they were either totally ineffective. Here, keep playing the B-roll of some of these images as you see the Iranian ballistic missiles smashing into this area of this air base that's occupied by U.S. forces in Jordan. Either the THAAD interceptors are not existent, either they're out of munitions in Jordan, and I think Iran realizes they're probably out of munitions, they're ineffective, or something else is going on, because it appeared that the ability of the interceptors to actually stop the Iranian ballistic missiles right now was under 20% as I was analyzing the strikes that were taking place. I mean, there were some other areas like the interceptors in Iraq seem to be doing a little bit of a better job, but Iran's been striking back hard in the Erbil region in Iraq and Kurdistan regions as well. I mean, Iran was able to strike hard there. There are multiple casualties being reported over there. Iran's been hitting Bahrain really hard. Iran hit an AI facility that's used by the U.S., the Babco fueling facility there. Iran's been striking hard in Kuwait. Iran's been striking hard in certain areas of Oman. Iran continues to control the Strait of Hormuz. There's been zero shipping through the so-called U.S. Oman lane at this point. And so if you take a look, Iran says they have, more ballistic missiles than ever. They have more Shahid drones than ever. And they don't appear to be bluffing right now. And so as I've been warning about, it's this increase of this escalatory ladder, this escalatory trap that Donald Trump is falling right into. You have one of the lead kind of advisors to Ayatollah Moshe Rezai, and he's been out there saying, look, we're done with negotiations. This idea of like negotiate back to war. We're done with it. We're in a war posture in Iran, and we're prepared for kind of all-out war at this point. U.S. CENTCOM again announced, earlier in the day yesterday that they were beginning the strikes, and they said, all right, we're done with our strikes every day now. It's been day after day, strike after strike from CENTCOM. But Iran has been, responding every single time, and Iran has been climbing the escalatory ladder as well. Also, Iran says that it was able to strike down an MQ-9 drone over Bushehr. About 30 to 35 MQ-9 Reaper drones have already been shot down by Iran since the disastrous and catastrophic war began. That's over $1 billion there of just MQ-9 Reapers alone. And again, one of the most disconcerting things is CENTCOM kind of covering all of this up, all of the damage that's happened. None of this is really being reported out. So we got to look at the satellite footage, and assess for ourselves what's happening. And again, what appears to be taking place is, as Donald Trump is, as he previously leaked to Barack Ravid, we're going to keep on bombing them really hard. We're going to take out some of their watchtowers, by Bandar Abbas. You have Pete Hegseth posting these photos of like the destruction of some of the maritime watchtowers. But that's going to make them want to do a deal with us. That's going to make them want to negotiate with us. And what we've always been saying is no, quite the contrary. It's going to make Iran not want to do a deal with you, and it's going to cause Iran to escalate in the region, which is what we're seeing now. Again, another big development I highlighted yesterday, Iran striking hard inside Saudi Arabia. Lots of explosions there. I don't think the Saudi Arabian
That's a stronghold where the troops are.
Stop all that. What's fascinating, too, about Iran's strategy is that they seem to be looking at which countries have, some of the more vulnerable areas when it comes to the Patriot interceptors and the THAAD interceptors. interceptors. It's notable Iran hasn't yet struck into Israel. I think they know that in that area they have a lot of, they have the Golden Dome, and so Iran's like, you know what, we're going to focus on right now, because the U.S. is attacking our civilian infrastructure, so we're going to attack your infrastructure in the region in areas that are far less guarded than Israel at this point. So we're going to strike the Arab nation neighbors and their interests where the American military bases are there. We're going to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz. We've got the Houthis on standby in the Red Sea, ready to shut down the Bab el-Mandab Strait. They're also working with allied groups in Somalia, and they're prepared to do that, to choke off the Bab el-Mandab Strait upon any moment's notice. And then Iran's testing. Okay, Saudi Arabia, how strong or weak are their interceptors? Jordan, the interceptors, very weak, keep hitting the Jordan bases. And like right now with impunity, because one of the things I've been warning about too, that and people in the military have been warning about, the American munitions, the interceptors, have been reduced to levels where America's like basically run out of the interceptors to give its allies. So Iran's able to send these Shaheeds, send these interceptors in, see which areas are weak. Jordan's weak, keep on hitting Jordan over and over again. Bahrain's weak, let's escalate not just to the Fifth Fleet area, which may be more well guarded. Let's hit some AI data centers. Let's hit some other areas that help the United States military coordinate some of these strikes. Hit Bahrain, hit Kuwait, hit some of these areas. And again, any ships that try to pass the Strait of Hormuz in the non-IRGC lane, Iran shuts down. And while all this is happening, as I've been warning about, these strategic petroleum reserves are tank bottom right now in the United States. And so we're right now in this global catastrophe that I've been warning against.
So, like everything else, global catastrophe. And that's the whole point of being able to usher it in, right? The New World Order, because you don't have oil coming in, right? If you destroy all the oil, you have nothing coming in. Well, what is he doing? Since he's losing the war, he's threatening Canada, over this catastrophe of wildfires, which are most likely direct energy weapons. Yeah, Esau uses that, so Trump is threatening Canada, because remember, he wants to make Canada the 51st state. He's threatened that. Trump threatens Canada over wildfires ahead of World Cup finale. U.S. President Trump has threatened to impose additional tariffs against Canada over wildfire smoke, which has blanketed much of the northeastern U.S. just days before the World Cup finale in New Jersey. Trump accused Canada on Friday of failing to manage its forests and allowing filthy, polluted, unhealthy air to cross the border. So like everything else though, raising more tariffs. So we'll play a little bit of this. Now obviously this is unclean air, but if they wanted to clean it, they would help Canada, not threaten them. Before, when there was things like this, they would offer to help if this was a real world. But you see, we're at the end of Babylon, and that facade of them being the heroes and helping, it's gone. Everybody sees Babylon for what it is. You can't trust them, and they renege on everything. They have their fingers crossed every time they make a deal. So who the fuck wants to make a deal with them? That's what's hilarious about Trump saying, oh, they want to make a deal. Well, they want to make a deal. Who can trust you? Nobody can trust you. Your allies can't even trust you. Great normalization. Nobody declared martial law yet. America begins looking like it anyways. Yeah, martial law is here. They're just not saying it. There are stories that announce themselves with explosions, riots, breaking news headlines, and there are stories so subtle that they quietly rewrite an entire society before anyone realizes what happened. This is one of the stories during the operation of the investigation. Several retired pigs, private security professionals, emergency responders, and ordinary citizens described nearly identical experiences despite living hundreds or even thousands of miles apart. None believed they were witnessing anything extraordinary. At first, it was only when they looked backwards sometimes over a decade, then disturbing pattern became impossible to ignore. Streets had not become military checkpoints overnight. Neighborhoods had not suddenly filled with surveillance towers. Instead, the changes arrived one camera, one drone, one security contract, and one temporary emergency measure at a time. Yep, they've already built this. They've already built those cities, those strong cities. And there's a whole network of them. They're already here. It's not a matter when they come. And they brought it in, and nobody even noticed it. Yep, that's very, very true. U.S. launches attacks against Iran for the 6th consecutive night, and that's of the 16th, so obviously a lot more has happened. As of 1400 hours, U.S. terrorists began conducting new wave of strikes against Iran for the 6th consecutive night. Well, I think we're on day 8. to further degrade Iranian military capabilities. Right, you're just hitting infrastructure. Iranian media reported several attacks against bridges and other infrastructure in Iran, suggesting President Trump was beginning to make good on his threat to destroy the country's bridges and power plants. Yep. So, like everything else, though, at least 3 bridges were targeted by U.S. strikes, and Iran's Modern News Agency reported at least 3 people were killed and 9 wounded by a strike and on one of the bridges in Bandar Kamer, a port city in the Hormozgan province. So, definitely escalations, right? So we got more here about this horrific attack that they launched, which changes everything as this Edomite goes into. So, tit for tat as this Edomite goes into, Iran did hit back and hit energy infrastructure in Kuwait and other areas, you know, destroying their infrastructure as well. You know, hey, you know, no holds barred now, you know, pretty much it's energy infrastructure for energy infrastructure, as you can tell.
Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. I'm filming this on July 17th. All information is up to date.
So obviously this is the 19th.
Has carried out a horrifying attack against a water desalination plant, and this is the tripwire, the red line. This changes everything. We are now going to enter a completely new stage of the war following this attack. On top of that, U.S. strikes continue to pound bridges across Iran. We have all the updates, all the information. We're going to break it all down. Before we do, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Totally free. Cost you guys nothing at all. Huge boost. Don't miss a thing. And then Instagram, David_Hookstead, XTHookstead. That's where you can find me on social media. And then plants. I believe it's something like 90% of the water in the Gulf countries has to go through desalination plants. If you knock out the desalination plants, you knock out the water in the Gulf countries. Iran has been threatening it for some time. Now it appears they have gone out and done it. So this is major news as of this morning. They bombed Kuwait's water desalination plant. So it says breaking Iran attacks water desalination facility. Kuwait's Ministry of Electricity, Water, and Renewable Energy stated that an Iranian attack via drone or similar struck the power generation and water desalination plant in Kuwait. It caused a fire, significant material damage, and multiple electricity generation units are offline. Everyone was waiting for this to happen. Everyone was going to see if Iran was going to follow through to this on this threat to knock out the desalination plants. Now we have the answer, and the answer is yes. This is going to invite a significant, and brutal response, not just from the United States of America, but also from the Gulf countries. They are knocking out the water supply. This is horrifying. This is a war crime. This is the type of evil that the Iranian regime represents.
Iran,
and now all eyes will be on how we hit back. I cannot believe the sadism, essentially, that the Iranian regime did here.
Yeah, but it's okay when you bomb schools for fun, right? Yeah, this Edomite's more on the side, well, why wouldn't he be, right? Of Edom, right? But you get it, right? Hey, you know, tit for tat. And this is going to increase. U.S. terrorist injured in Iranian strikes. Tehran once again pounded American facilities in Jordan where injuries were reported in previous attack. Attacks on at least 2 Jordanian bases used by U.S. terrorists resulted in several terrorist service members being injured, because that's what they are, as terrorists. U.S. Department of War has yet to confirm the reported injuries or respond to the CBS account. It is also unclear exactly when the strikes occurred or which bases were hit. Of course, they're covering it up. Iran has been pounding U.S. military facilities in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Iraq, and Syria with missiles and drones over the past week in retaliation. See, they're saving the Israeli state for last. So that's what they did. Exactly. I like it. Yeah, pretty much so. It ain't gonna play. Slovakia. U.S. strike leaves 10,000 Iranians without water. See, that's exactly it. But it's bad. It's bad when they respond, right? Oh, I can't believe Iran did that. Like that piece of shit, fucking goddamn Edomite. Yo, can't believe that Iran responded. Yeah, they're going to respond. And guess what? Babylon the Great, America's going to lose. They've been losing anyways. U.S. strike leaves 10,000 Iranians without power, without water, as Kuwait desalination plant burns. Officials said facilities were destroyed as Iran warned countries about U.S. terrorists to prepare for retaliation. The supply of drinking water in 20 villages with a population of approximately 10,000 people has been completely disrupted. Pour was quoted by Iran's Tashem news agency as saying, Pour called the strikes a series of crime and terrorist attacks, but they only, that Edomite only considers Iran the terrorist. Hey, who drew first blood? Who attacked Iran? See, these Edomites hold themselves not guilty. But guess what? Iran's holding them guilty. Adding that a seawater pumping station and a power transformer serving the Bungie desalination plant has been completely destroyed. These villages are facing a severe water shortage, he said. This is terrorism, and the U.S. is doing it. And that's why Iran is responding. You see, like everything else, though, we're going to see everything come to pass very shortly here. That's why it's important to get right while you still got time, because this thing is speeding up really quick. Iran says barbaric U.S. attack forced the evacuation of Children's Cancer Hospital in the city of Havas. Shahid Bagi Hospital, Children's Cancer Treatment Center in Havas, was evacuated last night after the U.S. terrorists attacked a nearby location, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman wrote on X. This barbaric attack, reminiscent of Israeli atrocities against healthcare facilities, caused severe suffering and anxiety upon the hospitalized children and forced the emergency evacuation of 211 patients undergoing chemotherapy, he added. So, hey, leave it to Esau. But here we go, man. Israeli terrorists still striking Lebanon. So these Israeli terrorists are continuing to invade southern Lebanon. Nothing new there. And of course, instead of hitting the Israeli state first, they're saving the best for last. Because these Israelis, well, they got a special plan for that. And you can read about those plans in the scriptures, which we will in just a little bit, because I believe this is where Gog Magog really entered therein. And you already know that troop movements are already being made. They won't talk about that publicly, but Iran's moving its troops in there. They already know about the impending ground invasion. But so far, the choppers and everything else trying to land in those areas have been shot down by Iran. But Russia's already sending its troops in there, ready for them. And they even stopped the Kurdistan area of trying to get in there too. They are already on the forefront of all this. It's not like that they aren't, in partnership with Iran as they provide intelligence and military support. Of course they're providing support. They're not going to let them fall like they did with Syria, which I was surprised about Syria.
In southern Lebanon has also come under fire as Israel carried out intense strikes on residential areas. Here is the latest exclusive footage from RT correspondent Steve Sweeney, who's in the Nabatea province. A large cloud of smoke is seen rising above a blast site shortly after the IDF attack that took place while the RT crew was filming nearby. Some other villages in the region were also targeted earlier this Thursday. Here's Steve Sweeney with more from the ground.
Just before we were about to go to air and film, a huge blast that took place. We could hear it very loudly across the region from where we are now. Now, this area behind us, where you can see the smoke billowing, is Nabatea al-Fawa. This is one of the areas that has been heavily targeted by Israel over the past few weeks. It's subject to daily bombardments and demolitions. The mayor from that area has recently, in fact, put out an appeal to the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, calling for him to intervene to stop the Israeli aggression that's taking place across this area. Now, this is a particularly volatile part of southern Lebanon. We're in Nabatea right now, but the area along the ridge around us is one of those areas that is coming under this daily and sustained attacks. Of course, there is supposed to be a ceasefire in place, but the attacks are taking place in places such as Kafar Tebnik, where there have been demolitions, airstrikes, drone strikes. Many of the roads, again, vehicles have been targeted along there. And Maifadun, which is on just behind one of the hills behind me, again, subjected to frequent Israeli bombardment. Also just behind us, you can maybe see on the ridge, the Beaufort Castle. This is the area where the Israelis said that they had taken control, raised the Israeli flag. However, many said that this was simply a publicity stunt for the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, with Israel's aggression on Lebanon and their ability to get a foothold in these strategically important areas hasn't gone to plan because of the resistance operations from Hezbollah. However, we have now had a statement from the leader of the parliamentary bloc, Hassan Fadlallah, which we can take a listen to now.
The opposition of the majority of Lebanese people to the ill-fated agreement is a national opposition that transcends the familiar political and sectarian alignments. Attempts to improve the image of this agreement will be of no use because its provisions are clear. It terminates Lebanon's existence as an independent state, legitimizes the occupation and its criminal practices, replaces withdrawal with pilot areas, prevents the return of displaced people and reconstruction, and makes these authorities the enemy's partner in every drop of blood it sheds and every home it destroys.
Now, all eyes are on these Israeli-Lebanese direct talks, the technical talks, as we understand, are going to thrash out the details of these so-called pilot zones. Well, we understand that they're due to take place on Friday. In the meantime, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry, more than 4,300 people have been killed since March the 2nd, and more than 12,000 people wounded. So while the world is looking at these peace talks to see if they're going to bring some kind of resolution for the people of Lebanon, peace seems a very, very distant hope.
Not to mention the Lebanese government, the puppet one is on the side of the Israeli state. They're the only active government that's protecting the people is Hezbollah. But, you know, Israeli state thinks that they could use that puppet government to destroy Hezbollah, but they're getting pounded right and left. Because, make no mistake about it, Russia is also intervening there. They won't talk about that in the mainstream, but Russia's also sending in soldiers into Beirut. Elder brother Malcolm broke that down as well. So Russia is a big reason why things are not going the way that they planned it. You know, they thought it'd just be easy to overthrow the government like they did. That, oh, once you get rid of Iran, Lebanon will fall, Yemen will fall, just like we did in Venezuela. And it's all failing. Why? Because Gog and Magog, aka Gog Putin, has been a guard unto them. And we're going to see more and more of that. Ultimately, the U.S. and the Israeli state are going to be isolated because even their own allies are turning against them, because who wants to deal with an asshole that just all he does is raise tariffs? See, the only reason why Trump was put in there is because he knows how to bankrupt everything. And that's why he was put in there, because as a businessman, he sucks. Okay, he's been bailed out so many times because he sucks as a businessman. That's why he was put in as the president, because he will bankrupt it. Just like he did with his Trump motels and everything else. They'll go bankrupt. And that was the whole point, just to go bankrupt. And to lose the war. So they got Hegseth, the fucking douche, in there, right? These Fox News actors to go in there to become this joke of a Department of a War. It's fucking hilarious. It's such a shit show. You just gotta laugh watching our enemies fall. U.S. to send more refueling aircraft as Trump weighs wider Iran war. So you're refueling places. That's right, because they're knocking out everything else. The U.S. plans to deploy dozens of additional aerial refueling aircraft, because the only other place they can land in is the Israeli state, because the airports in these other areas, well, they're all fucking wiped out by Iran. Cited 3 U.S. and Israeli officials. The U.S. news outlets said Trump was presented with several new military options during a Situation Room Tuesday, but had not made a final decision. U.S. and Israeli officials said Trump could order an escalation within days aimed to pressure Tehran to reopen the strait and accept D.C.'s nuclear demands. Oh, okay, so you think you're pressuring them. You think they're ready to make a deal with you. You know, like Deal or No Deal, and you keep on closing that button? No deal. They don't need you. You need them to make a deal. The U.S. currently has about 30 refueling aircraft stationed at Ben Gurion International Airport. Well, they could be blown away at any time, too. Near Tel Aviv, and a similar number at Ramon Airport in southern Israeli state. This is the only place they have to go to now. All them other bases have been wiped out by Iran. It's hilarious. Israeli officials said D.C. wants to deploy several dozen more aircraft, restoring the fleet to roughly the level maintained at the beginning of the conflict. Good luck with that, because all the bases are being wiped out. And, you know, this just reiterates it. U.S. sending dozens of refueling planes to the Israeli state as Iran escalation looms. Why it matters is after he was presented with several new military plans in a Situation Room, President Trump is considering massive offensive in Iran that would be wider in scope than the current strikes around the strait. The big picture, among the options being considered, are bombing Iran's infrastructure like power plants, and he's doing it, conducting more attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities, which you already heard the rumor that he's planning to actually use nuclear weapons against their so-called enriched uranium. And bombing the Pickaxe Mountain, there it is, underground site that is suspected to be a facility in the making. So there you go. He's really planning to actually use nuclear weapons against that mountain. Trump ordered escalation in the coming days. U.S. and Israeli officials say. Trump hasn't made the final decision yet. I think he did, and I think that we're seeing it. So there you go. Kuwait pounded by Iranian barrage as oil and desalination plants came under attack. As you know, this is just reiterating. Kuwait has been bombarded overnight in one of the fiercest Iranian retaliatory strikes since the U.S. conflict erupted in late February with missiles and one-way drones targeting power and infrastructure and other critical energy assets. So you can see everything that's hit there. It's being lit up. You know. So what they're going to do is they're going to cause all these allies to turn on them too. Which they know that they're not being protected, but they're still playing the game, right? You know. They have all drinking of that cup, you know. You know, have tasted the whore, you know, and part of the whoredoms, but they will soon turn against Babylon. But here we go. You know, this is another deal. Iraq and Syria signed deal to rehabilitate Mediterranean pipeline to bypass Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, they want to get their oil sold. MEE was the first to reveal that Syria and Iraq plan to unveil pipeline deal in D.C. Iraq and Syria signed a cooperation agreement to reconstruct a pipeline running from Iraqi oil fields to Syria's Mediterranean coast as part of the U.S. brokered deal to bypass the strait. The agreement was signed during the U.S.-Iraq Business Council meeting in D.C. That was earlier this week. Bassem Abdul Karam, and head of Basra Oil Company on behalf of Iraq. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright oversaw the signing. U.S. Department described the pipeline's renewal as a priority infrastructure project of bilateral and regional strategic significance. But as tensions build up with Turkey, they can block that at any time. So we'll just see. U.S. strikes take out 116 telecom towers in southern Iran. So expect the retaliation to be even more heavy. Authorities there have tailed at least 116 telecommunication towers were taken out of service due to the U.S. onslaught. This has resulted in outages and disruptions of fixed-line mobile and internet services. It suggests that the U.S. is returning to a strategy which seeks to create destabilization within targeting the ability of the public to communicate and access information. Returning to the situation of the earlier weeks of the war, which saw Tehran authorities themselves curb internet and some telecom access for the citizenry. Which, like everything else, though, they'll know how to counter this. And not to mention, Russia's going to be helping. Top Russian diplomat says potential closure of Bab el-Mandab Strait will harm global oil market. And he's right about that. This is Sergei Lavrov. He's saying, look, you know, what you guys are doing, man, it's going to destroy everything. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Friday said the potential closure of Bab el-Mandab Strait would harm international trade, particularly the global oil market. Both sides actively praised the document at the first that everything would proceed more or less smoothly, but these predictions have not come to pass. Lavrov said expressing that both sides accused each other of violations and missile exchanges, therefore security risks remain in the region. Lavrov said that Russia had been calling for a swift ceasefire and return to the point where the strait was completely free, functioning without any problems, without any charges, in its contacts with all parties involved. So, like everything else, that is still, you know, trying to broker peace, but, you know, eventually it's going to end up in a total war, and you see Sergei Lavrov meeting with Iran here. Russia pressing ahead on rail link to Iran and Azerbaijan to ease strain on maritime routes. This week has brought new U.S. attacks against Iranian infrastructure and logistics, including fresh overnight attacks on some half a dozen bridges, even reports of strikes on rail hubs and airports. New York Times Friday said that bridges, rail lines, power and water facilities and other targets in Iran, Kuwait and elsewhere in West Asia were attacked in airstrikes on Friday as the U.S. and Iran escalated their week-long war over the strait, which obviously Donald Trump doesn't like the idea that Iran is still in charge of the strait. So that's what this is about. Saudi Arabia mulls military escalation in response to Houthi threats. They don't want the port closed. Saudi Arabia official says the U.S. has given broad remit to pursue offensive strikes against the Houthis. Saudi Arabia is weighing different options to deal with the Houthis, who are escalating their threats against the kingdom in a sign officials and analysts said could forbode a return to fighting in Yemen. One U.S. and Western official said the discussions could point to differences of options within the Saudi royal court over how to respond to Houthi threat as wider fighting between the U.S. and Iran escalates. So like everything else, they're thinking about going back to their ceasefire, because ultimately closing down the other route would really destroy their oil market. So who has the leverage here? It looks like Yemen has the leverage there. Houthis inflamed tensions with Saudi Arabia earlier this month after a flight arrived at Sana'a airport to carry Houthi officials to the funeral of assassinated Iran Supreme. So they attacked them just for going to martyr Ayatollah Khamenei. That's what they won't tell you in the mainstream. Right there, that's the only reason why they got attacked. Because Trump was jealous, so he got Saudi Arabia to do his dirty work. Because he's butthurt that people, were there to... well, now it's blocked. Ansarullah vows to block Saudi access to Bab al-Mandab after strikes on Sana'a. Leading official for Yemen's Ansarullah vowed that the group would block Saudi Arabia access to Bab al-Mandab Strait, a vital bottleneck connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean, in response to the strikes against Sana'a airport on Monday that were blamed against Saudi Arabia, which Trump is the one that gave them the go-ahead, that basically told them to do that. And so, like everything else, we're listening to Trump. They're going to lose their ability to sell oil. They don't want that. That's why they're trying to de-escalate. You see? Trump's plan ain't even working. Katz tells Hegseth that Israeli state won't withdraw from Gaza, Syria, Lebanon. No shit. Katz added that Israeli state has never asked the U.S. to act in our place along our borders. Bullshit! Bullshit! I mean, talk about fucking gaslighting. That's all that the U.S. does, is defend the Israeli state, because they ain't defending their Gulf states. Katz added the Israeli state never asked the U.S. to act in place along our borders. Bullshit! You got a puppet government in there, and you got in there trying to get them to disarm Hezbollah. Fucking hell you ain't, man. But there we go. At least the flock shall draw them out. So I'm going to pull that up real quick, because here we are, escalation. And there's going to be a whole lot more this week, and you can best believe that. But we're just going to pull out a small little bit, because that's all you need to know, right? There's so much more, but pretty much though, the desolations will be made desolate with them, right? Pretty much they're going to come up into ruins. This place will be renowned no more, because nobody's ever going to see this place again once it goes up in smoke. And this is the war that draws them out, as you can see clearly. Jeremiah chapter 49 verse 20, King James Version. Therefore hear the counsel of the Most High that he has taken against Edom and his purposes, that he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Talking about this place, Basra, Babylon the Great. Surely the least of the flock, the small hats, Amalek, shall draw them out. Surely you shall make their habitations desolate with them. That's all you really need to know. And that this place will become desolate. And the Third World War is coming quickly. And we're going to see a lot more escalations leading to global energy shutdowns. And then amongst the global energy shutdowns, they're going to usher in, the universal basic income. They're going to bring in, more martial law, because guaranteed their civil war is going to erupt. I mean, everything's about to erupt. And people are fucking tired. It'll be city against city, kingdom against kingdom. You can read about that in the other scriptures. But this Third World War is what's really triggering it. Nobody really supports the war against Iran, because they know it'll be catastrophic. It already is. It's just going to get a lot worse. It's going to be a lot better for us to see the death of our enemies, but it's going to be a lot worse for them. And it's going to be definitely a lot worse for the 2/3 that are still joined on to Esau, Edom. They're going to be caught in his war. Because this is not Jake's war, this is Esau's war. But they're fighting for Esau. Guess what? They're going to be destroyed right along with Esau. So hopefully this has been edifying. For that I want to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakal Kadash, Wal Abal Babal. Barakatum Yehovah Elect. And the MOTB is your guarantee in this lake of fire that's going to be brought on by the nuclear destruction. So don't take the MOTB, which is the implantable microchip. Shalom.